All right, welcome to Leaf and Dram. This is Frankie Dranks, and this is my guest,
Joe
Joe
Pereira.
Pereira. Back again, man. He couldn't get enough the first time. He's come back for another hit and run here, as we like to call it. But listen, glad that everyone's here. I'm at the beautiful Cafe La Trova yet again. It's a little raining outside, so we're gonna have to put a short delay, but that's only here. It rains for a little bit, then we'll be back outside. But listen, I want to say thank you to everybody for tuning in, and make sure that you are following Frankie Dranks on uh, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and watch this wherever you want, because it'll be on the Leaf and Dram page. It'll be on the Frankie Dranks page. It'll be everywhere, so you can't miss it. Sorry about that, guys, but I wish we could all get on one stream. We could all chat together, but I'm trying, and I hope you guys bear with me. And thanks for tuning in, as you always do. Like I said, I'm super happy. It's National Rum Day, so I'm super excited to be celebrating National Rum Day. So we could say a little toast, a little salute, um, and I can't tell you what's in this glass, but what's going to come is super awesome, man. But I'm going to celebrate National Rum Day with a Joya Nicaragua numero uno. So for those guys out there, numero uno, Ecuadorian, Connecticut wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, Nicaraguan fillers, made by Joya Nicaragua. This was made for um, for the dignitaries, and it was a beautiful, beautiful expression of what Joya Nicaragua, the factory down in Esteli, does. And it's part of their Obras Maestras series, and it's this is a straight out Churchill, actually 6 7/8 by 48, so it's slightly off from the regular Churchill. Strength, body to medium smoke, even though again. Don't let the wrapper fool you. This is full. This comes in at medium. It has a lot of flavor, and I think we're going to enjoy this with our rum a little bit later. So, man, I can't
I,
wait
I
to.
will say that the packaging that it does come in is absolutely beautiful, detail
Let's hold that
oriented,
up. Yeah. So
and I hope that this does it some justice. It's wood with this veneer, like this blue veneer packaging. So when
gloss finish. Yeah.
when a foreign dignitary does visit a prime minister or whomever, an ambassador at that point, and then you have this marvelous box that just opens to what's laid out here beyond that, and that folds over, and you just have this gorgeous presentation. This pretty much sets up everything about the experience to have in
Yeah.
terms of what
Um,
Frank just talked about.
like I tell people, I mean, a lot of people have gotten used to sniffing the wrapper across, and I always say, sniff,
Mhm.
get a good whiff of the end, and
Uh,
get
may
the
I? May
whole.
I? Yeah.
Absolutely, that's
Fantastic.
definitely for us
Yeah.
to enjoy
Okay.
and get a real good inhale off of the foot. Get all those flavors and aromas that you're going to get, and then that last piece is then wrap it up with a little bit of the wrapper by itself, and then mouth before you light it. I'm always been say, hey, cold draw your cigar first, get a little air through it, so you get like the unadulterated oils coming through right before you ignite, before you start the combustion process, which changes the cigar. So, for those of you guys out there, take the time. We always said take your time with a cigar.
Yeah. No,
It's not a cigarette.
no, it's not a cigarette. And then you just recently taught me, because I'm relatively new, even though I am aware and cigars have been in my peripheral in my career. It hasn't been until recent months in which you've taken me under your wing to understand that there's three different types of experience I have with one cigar:
Right.
the beginning, the middle, and just before the end.
Right. So that this cigar will live in its thirds, and the blend changes slightly.
Sure.
That's the deft hands of the rollers that are
Sure.
doing their unique blending aspects to what they do to fold in that little bit of extra leaf, a little extra ligero up in the middle,
Hmm.
and they fold it back. And everyone has their own secrets, and it definitely changes. And if it was unchanged,
Yeah.
just the combustion, the heat going through a cigar would change it over time as well. So you get all those extra extra notes that start to come out as, I like to call it as a cigar cooks. So as a
Okay.
cigar cooks a little bit, you're not cooking, you're just like toasting at that smoke
Sure.
is drying out the leaf, burns a little different, and you may need to touch it up here. That's okay. That's not a problem. Everyone's weather is different. How you've stored the cigar, all those things affect the way a cigar interacts with you. Just be patient with it. That's all I say. Just be patient with it. So one of the great things with Drew Estate and Hoya and a lot of other great makers is that they don't rush their production, so you don't need that extra time in your home humidor. Um, you can just pretty much take them out of the. Always recommend that due to shipping, due to all those things, you may want to take that little extra. But man, if you get a box of cigars, the first thing you want to do is crack one open and go to town,
Go
and
to
that's
town.
good too. There's nothing wrong with that. So
Do you find there's people who are in this world who take notes on the example the thought that I have is you have this box of Neurono. It's just been opened. It's fresh. It's beautiful. You've stored it properly because this is who you are. This is
right.
Leaf and Dram. Being said, um, do people take notes from the first cigar that they've had, and then do they take notes on when they visited a couple of months later, and do they
Some some
go
some
back and
people
review
do.
the notes? Okay,
Shout out to our boy Mike P out in Vegas, who does a great job with Master Your Ash, and Mike takes extensive notes, not just tasting notes, but all those notes about
sure,
how that cigar is working, how that cigar is long,
sure,
and how it's aging, because he has a very extensive collection, and he does this. So this is
okay,
guys like Mike I know take extensive notes. Um, I unfortunately don't try to store everything up. You got the best plan. Write it down because you will forget over time. There's just so many expressions, so many different vitolas. You come across you don't like and try another vitola. All of a sudden, it opens it up for you,
sure.
and it creates a brand new experience. So, a man's making a banana daiquiri over there, and I may order one in a little bit. So,
I will say this: we're at La Trova, and we're here just as the shift for the night has started, and right after pre-shift, which is typically when management instructs the staff of the nightly operation of what's about to happen. Soon as pre-shift broke, there was a congregation of about 20 of the front of the house, servers, bartenders, just everyone. They all had a shot of their cafecito. Am I right?
yeah,
I was just like,
listen,
it was amazing.
this is a Cuban. I mean, it's in the heart of Little Havana. I grew up blocks from here, um, and it speaks to every part of our Cuban heritage.
Sure.
And part of that is you have a shot of liquid cocaine every 3 hours. It's just part of it, whether it's 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. You got to take pre-shift. Great time to have a little cafecito. We'll probably need one after this, but
I'm
listen,
all in.
listen. Happy National Rum Day for everybody out there. August 16th. Um, Somebody picked an arbitrary date for to celebrate National Rum Day, and we're celebrating National Rum Day in my own way, Leaf and Dram way. And what we're going to do is we're really going to dive into the history. We really can't dive into the history of rum without talking about the history of sugar. So let's go down that road because they're all intertwined. So
It
for
is.
you guys know, where does sugar come from? It comes from a sugarcane plant. One of the long grasses, relative of bamboo, relative of any of the Southeast Asian, which is where it comes from. I mean, there's so many different resources, but some people it says it's New Guinea is the home of sugar cane. The varietal that we use, there are the varietals as well, but the main type that we've been using
It's
for
from
sugar
it's
production
from
from
Papua New Guinea. Yeah.
Papua New Guinea,
Yeah.
6,000 BC. So that's kind of at least when you're looking historicals of how long sugarcane's been around. Um,
Yeah, we've been drinking for a long time.
yeah, and actually,
Sugarcane juice, excuse me.
right, and not even that, because if you got to remember that even back in 6,000 BC,
See,
the amount of work to extract sugarcane juice would have been so extensive.
yeah,
More than likely, it was probably used as a food source. of
Yeah.
some sort. You know, so
Yeah.
we got to kind of follow, its use. And mind you, we are human beings. We thrive on sugar.
Yeah,
Uh,
we do. And as well as sugarcane juice was a probiotic. It was really great for a lot of intestinal issues that people may have had. Believe it or not, to the contrary, people think that sugarcane or chewing on raw sugarcane was actually bad for your teeth. It was actually not bad for your teeth.
had some
Uh,
antiseptic product,
it's an antiseptic product that was
or
used at
properties. I'm sorry.
exactamundo. It wasn't until sugar became manufactured at an industrial level where it actually became a problem, and then issues with cavities and so forth, and bad hygiene, etc. But to go back to the genesis of what you're talking about, we're talking about 6,000 years ago. There's the oldest records are from the Sanskrit.
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 Sanskrit, and
Uh,
and that's going about 1,000 BC. We know that it spreads from Southeast Asia
Stasia.
through trade routes
Right.
into India. So we're looking at uh, a
Sure.
thousand when we start to get Indian recusing this product, sugarcane, this natural product. One of my favorites is that, so we know we're using sugarcane for medicinal purposes. There was an account somewhere in the 300 BCs, not 100% correct, but Alexander the Great's exploration into Southeast Asia, writings that were part of it, they find that in India they're using a fermented sugar drink, right?
Yeah.
So the first, this has been with us a long, long
A
time.
long time, a long time. And so I do know that when Alexander the Great was exploring Asia and what was happening in Kemet, i.e., Egypt at that particular time, uh, a lot of the sugarcane that is planted today and raised in the West, in the Caribbean, in South America, is actually a specific varietal that actually comes from northeast Africa.
Right. Call it Egypt is
We would call it
probably
Egypt
modern day.
modern day.
There
Uh,
was a great post today by the drinking coach.
Tiffany.
Yeah, Tiffany.
Tiffany B commented on that, and I sent her some pictures. But she
She had a great backup story. So
a great backup
tell
story.
everybody about that.
So basically, if you go to the drinking coach, Tiffany Barrier, who so eloquently put down within 3 paragraphs a distinct and precise account of how sugar cane became developed and how it was discovered, and then celebrating today, which is our national. She stops at uh, what we are about to discuss is actually brought to the New World and the Caribbean. And Frank and I were just about to have this really great discussion, in which we'll talk about how once one country, one small island, had a very pivotal role in the production of how, unfortunately, the harsh reality of what slavery meant to the labor sugarcane, thus creating the sugarcane juice and the molasses to make the rum. And that small island was actually Madeira. But all of that being said,
I'm going to jump back before we get to Madeira,
yeah,
right? Because it was such a great post that, we
yeah.
want to jump forward, but
Oh, and then she brings in how through Arab trade. And then I discovered through reading notes the past few weeks, because I've been really interested in sugar, is Marco Polo was also a player in drinking sugarcane China. So, but as
and we're not sure if it was China, and we're not sure, it was, we can go from what is modern day Persia, which is not Persia, it's Iran, but what was Persia and Mesopotamian basin, all the way to China. So somewhere along the route, he encounters sugarcane wine, which would make sense if Alexander would have encountered fermented sugarcane.
yeah,
So
so yeah, because you went to the
it's been
northeast.
something that's been part of what our civilized basin has been creating.
Sure.
for the longest time. Marco Polo and Marco Polo, prior to Marco Polo, at the start of the Crusades, when the go into what we call modern day Middle East or Western Asia,
Yep.
they encounter what they call sweet salt.
Sweet salt. Yep.
You know, uh,
Yep.
rock sugar,
Or Indian.
Indian salt,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever.
Sweet salt,
Indian
rock
salt,
sugar, or
rock sugar.
Indian
Yeah.
salt. All these were
Right,
essentially the
right.
same thing.
They did the word for sugar really wasn't a vocabulary term. So salt was the one because it was,
Mhm.
and they understood that there was an actual product that was a version of salt, and and, and again, but now to and by the way, there's a great book that addresses Batavia, Iraq, um, and Batavia, Iraq is comes from
What we call Lebanon today.
yes from Lebanon to Iran,
Iran.
right?
Okay.
Where they actually take sugarcane and yeast, and that together is what they're making their Iraq. But that's guys, that's going really deep into the pool, and I look. But let's now talk about we hit like the 1400s, right?
Which sugarcane at that time was because sweeteners were derived from other products. So sugarcane really didn't become a thing during the early 1400s, late 1400s. Um,
We always talk about like the New World, right? Beginnings of the New World, we always get is 1492,
yeah,
right? But there's so much that happens in the world, you know, from 1491 before
four.
that sets up Genovese traders from Genoa
Genoa, yep.
onto the islands of the Canary Islands, Madeira,
Cape Verde Islands, the Azores. We're
Azores,
forgetting the
right,
Azores as well.
right. So if you go down, it's Azores, um,
Madeira,
Madeira,
Canary,
Canary,
Cape
and
Verde
Cape
Islands.
Verde. So Cape Verde, yes. So there's people that are taking these products, and again, they're think about like the nature of human beings trying to find something that has value.
Sure.
And listen, we know how to survive. We know how to cultivate. Now it's about making money. Now it's about how do we, you know, uh, Marco Polo goes a long way. Columbus is trying to go the short way.
way.
You know, so it's very simple. And but if you're going the short way, let me bring a few things with me. And but that's right before the eras that we're talking about, especially Madeira. Madeira is very very important in, and we never talk about it. We only know it from Madeira wine, and if you haven't tried it, time to get some.
Okay, so uh, when the Declaration of Independence was signed, found the basis of this country, they toasted to Madeira wine. But what was really interesting, and briefly earlier, how important Madeira is in terms of being a player in the sugarcane world, it was indirectly in a sense. Yes, there was sugarcane planted in Madeira, but not a lot. Yes, there was sugarcane planted in the Canary Islands, but not a lot. And with Cabo Verde as well, not a lot. It was there before it became proliferated throughout the Caribbean and South America, etc. The Portuguese wanted to plant grapes to make wine out of the mainland. So they wanted to make port wine outside of port. So Madeira was just an island that was there. So they decided that they wanted to go ahead and plant grapes to make port wine. And the sugarcane juice that was now being distilled in Madeira was actually buying that Madeira wine, but then it was being shipped back to port to be called port wine. The Portuguese folks in port was like, no, 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 no. That's not port wine, not to be confused, and et cetera, et cetera. So that was a quick halt to what happened. So naturally, what happened if Madeira wine wasn't going to be brought back to port to be called port wine, then Madeira wine, this is when it formalized to be its own thing. One. Two, then then that was the explosion of when sugarcane became the main thing in Madeira, and then it proliferated through Canary Islands, Cape Verde Islands, and then it became something that was being exported to the New World with the introduction
Right.
of Columbus bringing it to what we call today the Dominican Republic, which was then Santo
Hispaniola,
Hispaniola.
the entire island, Hispaniola.
Mhm.
Again, today it's Santo Domingo and Haiti, but the island of Hispaniola is historically 1498, Columbus's third voyage.
It was third voyage.
Third voyage, he actually, I mean, there's a lot of research. I think this is the best one I've come up with. Is like they said in the third voyage they brought a plant in Hispaniola. Again, only 6 years in between. So, that voyage happened every 2 years from 1492. Um, and kind of going into the Caribbean history,
Sure.
in 1501, which by 1501, I think in Brazil, it had already started
Yeah, they had already.
sugar production, planting, uh, and the birth of the sugar mill. It kind of comes in. I mean, very rudimentary thing, just kind of jumping forward.
Sure.
I'm sorry, in 1506, the first sugar mill opens in Santo Domingo.
But it's not an industry just yet.
No,
It's there, but it's not.
It's a
It's
process. So, in
yeah.
other words, it takes a year for sugarcane to proliferate. So, at some point, they realize in 1501, first crop is harvested. By 1506, know that they can process it because they built the first sugar processing plant for the time. Again, probably running the same timeline in Brazil and by 1511, shout out to not the muralist, but the conqueror of
The
Cuba.
conqueror.
Sugarcane is introduced to Cuba. So, and that's kind of like the timeline. So we're talking about the early 1500s.
And in the old world, they're not thinking about sugarcane just yet. They're drinking sherry, they're drinking brandy, and
No,
they're drinking Madeira port.
Rum is something that we're about 100 years
Just
away
wait.
still, right?
A century, and think about that particular time in terms of how long a century actually was.
A century, right? A century of progress. But what they did know is sugar's value. Um, Sugar production, the final product, right, or sweet salt, is valued in Europe. They're still trying to figure out how to use it because number one, if you're in the Iberian Peninsula,
Sure.
you've been conquered by the Moors from for 600 years.
So let me ask you this question since we're jamming right here. Was it the Moors who introduced the sugarcane to the Spanish
Well, if you study like the Moorish influence into Spain, they like to sweeten with honey.
with honey? Okay.
It's very typical of the Mediterranean basis. Honey is a sweetener. Sugar is a just because sugar cane came from it. What to do with it is a different animal.
It's a different animal.
And so, Spain learns to take on over 600 years, adapt eating habits from the Moors, and so their sweetening agent is honey.
Honey.
But now the introduction of a crop that could be grown in the New World, that could be sold to different parts of Europe, and prior to that, remember the Genoan traders
That's
knew
right. Because it wasn't even Italy yet. Italy didn't
No.
become a country until
much later.
much
So-
later. So we're talking about
so
Genoa.
Genoa,
Yep.
this is Columbus's birthplace.
Yep.
These guys are traders, and not trader us. Traders in that they are trying to figure out what products can sell in different parts of the world because they do own the best fleets to move items from one place to another. So, in that, I think we've finally gotten to the introduction, right, of sugar.
Yep.
As the granulated or rock version product of what we know, into produced in the New World, shipped back to the Old World, and as the Old World gets introduced to it, now we get into where we started,
Now
which
it becomes a commodity.
right
Now it
as
becomes,
as soon as we're talking about of sugar, right, and
sure.
the minute that it turns and has value, same thing happened with tobacco, by the way. And we'll get to that in a second because that's a different story, and I want to save that for a different show about the history of tobacco into the old world. So we're going to stick to sugar, but it follows the same trajectory. The minute that queens and merchants find that this is a product that can provide it's a sweetener that's different than honey that has multiple
And then
uses
it has monetary value,
has,
in which
right.
now you can say, I can trade you this cup of sugar for that cow, et cetera, et cetera.
Where honey is at the vagaries of a bee and the bee colony, right? Whether you had to go find it
Mhm.
or you learn to harvest, bee rudimentary beehives,
Sure.
you're at the mercy of what nature is producing. But now man can't cultivate honey, but man
Can
cultivates
cultivate
sugar.
sugar. Yeah.
So now shelf stability, right? But then we find out the brutality, which is the truth of sugar.
Very brutal. And just before we get into that, um, the indigenous people that were already on the islands of the Caribbean and parts of South America, there just wasn't enough of a labor force.
Two,
And
two, two items. There's not enough of them, but there are a lot,
there's a lot.
right?
Because we're getting into
Not
scale now. We're
not
getting, yeah,
not used to not used to being enforced labor,
yeah.
not their thing. And then the introduction of foreign diseases, which decimates almost 90% of them
Gone.
within 100 years. So the inability to maintain natives for servitude, the amount of work necessary
To
um,
produce, and
to
the scale that
right.
now that the old world wants to, the financial uh, benefits from it, building their empire. Uh, and then this is the inception of the triangle,
Right.
the slave trading triangle.
Not just yet, Joe.
Not just yet. Did I get
Not
too far
just
ahead?
yet.
Okay.
But we do have the need for labor in the new world,
Sure.
right? We're still we're still talking about we're about 100 years away from the first production of rum, but we definitely are starting to produce sugar, and that is incredibly labor intensive.
Expensive.
In that you need land first. So um, just the amount of people, it wasn't like there were clear fields and we just went and planted. We actually had to change the entire environment of where what the island. So it was to clear acres and acres of land just to get it ready to grow sugarcane. That was a multi-year process. um, Planting, again, it will end in one season, but just that process, just the process of clearing the land and changing the environment, getting it ready to grow sugarcane, was incredibly dependent on human labor. And if you can't get it indigenous, you'll solve problems the most the most
Heinous of ways.
painless of ways,
Yeah.
and the most economically advantaged to
Advantage to yourself.
themselves, right?
Yeah.
So here we are. We're producing sugar. Um, it's the need for slave
Slave labor.
labor from West Africa predominantly coming into coming into Brazil,
The
coming
Caribbean.
into the Caribbean.
Yeah.
And we don't, I think 1619 is the first year that North American colonies see the first slaves.
They did.
The
They did come with
first slave
Jamestown.
trade, right?
Yeah, they did come with
So,
Jamestown. That's been proven. That's been well
yeah,
documented. That even though Jamestown was not a quote unquote successful
right.
colony, just because of what happened in terms of the The English,
Right.
unfortunately, didn't make friends with the indigenous Americans that were there, and cannibalism became a horrible outcome of
Well,
that.
that's like that's part of that weird part of American history. But more importantly, I think that we get to so there's these blocks of years. So I want you to think about it. It's like the 1500s start, and slavery gets introduced into the Americas almost 120 years later.
Yeah.
But in those 120 years,
It's indentured servitude, correct? They
no,
tried that out for a while. They
yeah, with colonists coming
from England
from England to
to,
the New
yeah,
World.
it didn't work out that well.
No, because you at some point you have to let them go. At some point, so and it's also relative to the amount of work. So all these things go into, and we can talk about cotton and tobacco, labor intensive as well, and sugarcane. So
Sure.
but more importantly, is starting in the early 1500s, we have slavery going into Brazil, and becoming such a uh, necessary part of growing sugar in Brazil, going into the West Indian islands, all the way into Hispaniola. And we have really, that's the birth of slavery. So we've established the first leg, the
Yes,
back and forth leg
like
of
trade.
trade, right?
Trade, yeah.
You need slaves to come from West Africa, and that costs money.
Yep.
So that's investment. They put them into the New World. That New World produces sugar. That sugar is sold back to Europe. It produces income, and that income is then reinvested into more slaves
Slaves.
because you want to grow an industry. And that's the beginnings of the small beginnings. I want you to be sure, and everybody out there, that it's small at this start, at this stage, and what it becomes is massive. But let's talk about. I'm gonna deviate for a second, and one of the things, let's quickly go over how we make sugar, right? So we put sugarcane stock when it's ripe. We put it in a mill. It's not a grinder per se, but it is a mill. It will squeeze the juice out of it, and then it leaves you with a very woodsy bagasse, which is what we call it.
And
But
at that time, it was as simple as stones, two
yeah,
heavy stones,
and they just
uh,
just
and then you would just force it in, and there would be some type of
yeah.
beast that would just be moving in a circle and through pulleys and wheels in a system that sugarcane would be fed
Fed
through,
it, yeah.
and then the
And then
byproduct of the juice would be
well,
harvested,
right. So the juice itself is then
harnessed.
then put in a boiler. I mean, I'm trying to put this as simple as possible. We put in a boiler. We boil away the water feature that's in it. Once the water feature is gone, the nature of the sugar, the saccharides in sugar,
Yes.
they link to each other. They actually adhere to the vessel.
It almost becomes like gelatinous in a sense.
Yeah, and then if you let it dry, it'll harden.
It'll harden. Yeah.
So they'll collect that, and then there was a byproduct of it, which is essentially molasses. So, and that's kind of where the birth of rum starts from. What the fuck do we do with this, right?
Exactamundo.
And
Because you have one part in a different part of the world where the first press of a sugarcane juice is actually what is being distilled. That comes in revisits later, but then there's this byproduct of what you just
yeah,
said. What is it that we're not going to waste this? Like what can we do with this?
essentially we're talking about how people figured out how to reuse industrial waste. All right, so essentially, I'll talk about like so after you boil off that first boiling.
Boiling, yeah.
In today's classification, we'll call that Class A molasses,
Classic
right?
molasses, okay.
Or cane honey, depending on where you're from. And I think in Madeira was one of the first places, and still one of the only places that will actually distill out of cane honey.
Cane honey. Okay.
Um, Class B molasses is you boil that part down and try to pick up your remnants. Those are where you pick up like your brown sugar, which is what we recognize today. Just a little extra boiling process, introduction, a little more water, force it to boil again, force it to crystallize. We get our second molasses, and that's pretty much that's where molasses gets like its signature. It has a little sweetness, has
Dark, a
some
little sweet
bitterness.
bitterness to it. Yeah.
You can do that one more time, and you get black strap, which a lot of people
And
recognize in
then,
the
then
South.
after blackstrap, that's the end.
That's
You
it.
you,
It
you
goes
can't
in.
do anything
It,
with
go,
it.
it goes in the Jamaican dunder pit, and we'll talk about dunder pits later. But it's your hogo, man. So the, the history, as best as we can present it, is that the history of rum starts with slaves churning the throwaway, which was the industrial waste, the molasses, and turning it into something that they could ferment. Fermentation, every place in the world knows how to ferment something to make it alcoholic, right?
Medicinal,
Sure.
if you want to
Whatever.
call it
Well,
that.
okay, yeah. As an AA is a medicinal institute.
Yeah.
You know,
Fair point.
but listen, but every culture knew that, and then with the introduction of simple distillation,
Sure.
right? Simple distillation. We know we know that the Europeans introduced distillation because they got it from the Arabs for use in the New World. And then we had a great discussion about mezcal the other day, and we'll bring that up again too. But the introduction of industrial level distillation.
Yeah.
This is probably something that was very simple distillation, as easy as you could get it, for the time.
Yeah.
And you can imagine what the word, and historically we can call it rumbullion or kill devil or whatever. Listen, anything.
Kill Devil is that tiny little 3 ounce bottle of all of that stuff that no one else wanted. But if you drank enough of it,
So yeah,
kill Devil.
so
There you go.
and rumbullion, which was a word for like making a ruckus, you
Sure.
know, but that becomes the world that becomes the world of the kind of the seed at that point.
Point. Yeah.
We know now we head into something else because this is about two theories. One is that early 1600s rum gets distilled in the West Indies, right?
Yes.
More than likely, it's either Nevis, Saint
Which
Nevis.
is a country, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I like the nuances of like all of this, right? Whenever I go to classes or I sit down and talk or learn the ever evolving world of rum, a lot of people forget about or Nevis. What's the right
Well,
word? Nevis
it's
and Madeira. They don't ever talk
Saint
about those
Nevis.
two.
So we used to Saint Nevis is the I guess the modern one.
Yep.
It was founded theoretically, and I mean theoretically because we don't exactly know. La Señora in Spanish it was Nuestra Señora de las Nieves. Our Lady of the
Snow.
Snows. And apparently, on one of the peaks, they thought there was snow
Snowy.
there,
Okay.
and they named it Nieves. Las Señora de las Nieves. So, and whatever, transfer hands, Neves, Saint Nevis, um, Saint Nevis, Barbados, right? Somewhere around there. No one's going to exactly know when someone did some crazy shit at some point, but we do know the recorded record, 1651, someone actually puts a pen to paper. It doesn't mean it happened that year. It just means that somebody made a record of it in 1651 in Barbados, and where they called it Kill Devil. I think the quote is a hot and hellish and terrible liquor. And that was their definition of it
Yeah.
upon first trying it. Other theory is that there have been tradesmen that come up from Brazil much earlier and introduce distilling to the West Indies.
To the West Indies.
Completely possible. Again, all we know is first recorded 1651, right? So we can basically say that at 1651, the production, we know from mid 1600s, the production of rum now steps up. People look at it as a money making venture beyond sugar. Because if I can make sugar and I'm wasting all this stuff, if I can take that and make something else, that's what I'm doing.
And we're still 100 years away from the cash cow that it becomes.
Oh yeah, because we can look at things
Yeah.
in 100-year chunks, and that's kind of like the way I like to look at things. Like they tend to roll in 100 years. You need 100 years, and in man time seems a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a lot. So so again, now we get rum, right? Now we get the introduction of rum. Now we get people's appetites. So now the Portuguese, the Spanish, the British, the French, the Dutch, and the the birthing American colonies have interest in rum. As we said before, early 1500s, the Portuguese are bringing slaves to the New World.
Yep.
And 120 years later, slaves are introduced to American colony. That's the last one. So in 120 years, it spreads all over the Caribbean, from Central America, South America, all the islands.
The English, the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, everyone is involved in the slave trade, and everyone as well is involved in the rum trade because they're symbiotic. You cannot have one without the other.
So we can talk about 4 major industries all over the Caribbean in varying degrees: sugar, rum, cotton, tobacco. So we can talk about those 4 commodities, and each island, each place each colony has a different civilization, but at the end of the day, they all have the same needs. So now we can talk about what I call, and because I used to teach back in the day, it really wasn't a triangle because it was more like a square.
Yes, no, you're right. When you think about it,
the simple one is a triangle. But look, slaves are purchased in Africa. They're brought across the Middle Passage into from South America, Brazil, all the way to North America. Right? Right. They're really traded in the West Indies, right? In Brazil and the West Indies for their ability to work sugar
in harsh climates that were similar to where these enslaved, captured people lived. Yes.
And, well, what's your payment? Well, the payment for bringing in labor is you get paid in the commodity. So at that point, and we're going to just focus on West Indies, you get paid in raw sugar and you get paid in molasses. They take the sugar and molasses and they bring it to New England. Because one of the things that American ingenuity did was American ingenuity was able to master distillation very quickly. And this is like kind of your hood. Massachusetts, New England is the hood of massive
rum production without a doubt
in the northern colonies. And I think at some point they've just produced more than anyone.
So to help people better understand, we always associate from a very straight particular point rum with Caribbean. But what we don't realize that when all of this started, rum production, now you have all of these beautiful rums made throughout the Caribbean and South America. But the founding financial backbone came a few different ways, and I'll be specific just because I'm a kid from Massachusetts, and I can tell you. Here's a note. Here's a quick number for you, and we're going to touch about it because he likes to work in 100-year chunks. But in 1770, there were 118 distilleries in the United States producing rum that was imported from the Caribbean and from parts of Brazil.
Made from molasses, imported from the Caribbean. Correct?
Made from the Caribbean. Out of those 118, 50 of them were in the state of Massachusetts. Another 25 in Rhode Island, state right next door. 19 of the 25 that were in Rhode Island were in one island of Newport. And there was 5 or 6 in the state of Connecticut out of 118 distilleries in the United States at that time. What Frank has been illuminating and highlighting is how important of a player rum is in the birth of the new world. It is paramount, in my opinion, in terms of the scale of what was happening and the scale of production of what was happening in Massachusetts. But go, I just wanted.
Hey, no, I love that because we're going to jump on that. But let's talk about like when they're done producing it. Uh, when they're done producing it, where does that rum go? Right. Well, part of it was massive amounts of American consumption of rum by the colonies.
I think you have that number.
I do.
It's pretty
It's
intense.
3.5 gallons. 3.5 gallons per person per year. That's every man, woman, and child.
Okay, so I do know. I don't know why I know this, but I do know at that time that Frank's talking about, there's less than 2 million people in what was America at that time.
And I'm talking about like this is like the numbers they pulled.
The colonies. There's too many in the colonies.
1775, right before the Revolution. 3.5 gallons of rum, man. All right. So let's see. A liter. So every 3 liter bottles, right,
Yeah.
is 1 gallon. So people are taking down about a 4.5. No shit.
No,
Right. No.
liters.
Yeah, they're doing 4.5. So everyone's taking down pretty much. It's 9 liters. That's 3 gallons. So imagine a 12-pack case. Everyone's doing about 1.5 of those every year. Not bad.
Not including the beer consumption and the wine consumption.
Not including wine, not including beer. But that's nice. And listen,
Toasty.
man,
These people were toasty
listen, man.
and angry.
We passed by Madeira, and we didn't get a pour. So listen, I'm a little parched here. I'm talking some serious smack.
Do we want to tell folks, take a quick little break of what we're pouring here
Yeah. So
and do
let's
a
go.
quick little tasting?
So let's talk about it because let's
Because
go back to Madeira.
all right. So you go back to Madeira, and we talk about how the Portuguese want to start making wine production off of the mainland, and they try to convince the folks in Madeira and other parts of the island, the Cape Verde Islands, along with the Canary Islands, about this wine production, and then bring it back to port. But the folks in port were like, no, this is going to disrupt what we already have. Anyway, so sugarcane begins to take off, and then the distillation of. So what we have here,
We tried that first.
we tried this first. You want to try it again? No, you want
No,
to go to something else?
let's go to
Okay,
go
yeah,
to
let's
that
go.
one
Let's go to
because
this
that one's got a special connection to you.
This one has a special connection to me because this rum is from the Cape Verde Islands. In particular, it's from the islands that my mother and father and their entire family is from, which is out of the archipelago, right? On the lower side, the most distant and remote island is called Brave, Brava, Brave. And this rum has been production for many centuries. It's been passed on from family to family, tradition to tradition. So I found it in my hometown of Massachusetts because there's a large population of Cape Verdeans that live there, and they still drink this, and it's imported into the United States, but it's only found in very small Cape Verdean communities, Brockton, New Bedford. That's it. So when Frank approached me about, hey, let's talk about rum for National Rum Day, I was all about it, and I was just like, I just so happen to have a couple of these bottles laying around my house here in Fort Lauderdale. So I'm excited to try this with him because this is going to give us an indication of what rum production was looking like 450 years ago in the Cape Verde Islands, and what these profiles were like at that particular time.
And the mystery here is we really don't know if that is a molasses or a honey or cane honey
or cane
distillery,
honey. Yeah, we just don't know
or a
yet. There's
combo.
or a combo of both. But here we're about to learn and we're about to try. So this one, let me just name it to you because it is called Cova di Turo, right? Cove of the Taurus, right? And then right here, it is imported into Brockton, Massachusetts. Just so for those of you who want to know and who want to dive in yourself. I can't read too well because I don't have my reading glasses, but distributed by Brockton Liquors in Brockton, Massachusetts. And here's their phone number. Give them a call, 508 894 6771. If you're interested of getting a bottle, he'll ship it out to you, etc.
I'll put a picture of the stuff that we're tasting. I'll throw it up on my Instagram, and I'll put the
Yeah,
information.
go ahead. You
man.
pour the
But,
first pour, and let's see where we're at with this. And we're going to do a complete tasting note.
and I'm super excited. Listen, man, I'm woefully ashamed that you know where Cape Verde is, and you don't know a whole lot of people from Cape Verde, and that was me. And then listen,
And then we meet. Right?
thanks to Anthony Bourdain for talking about. I think New Bedford and Massachusetts
Because of the
and-
Portuguese population
right,
that's
exactly.
there. Yeah, exactly.
And that was very cool.
So here we go. Boom. So let's have a head.
From Gio.
from the brand, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. These are rums from Cabo Verde.
From Cabo Verde?
Yeah, right here.
Oh,
These two
never,
right here.
never tried. I'm going to try later.
Okay, guess there it is. There's two whole bottles. Folks, we're just geeking out right now. Here, you want to have a pour? Here you go. A little bit.
So Julio, we're trying an amazing. Man, I'm having a real tough time deciding if that is from.
I went to the factory. I went to Joya de Nicaragua. Yeah, they have a lot of nice new cigars.
Yeah, they're fantastic.
Lancero, right?
Church
Oh, Church.
with the little fancy.
Oh, yeah, it's small.
Here you go.
So
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, yeah.
Salud. Salud.
Salute.
Ah, Rico.
yeah, that one's an agricole.
agricole.
This one,
right?
yeah,
Oh, it's
that
amazing.
one. We're having the other one, and it's very hard to decide if this is agricole. I think this is sugarcane honey.
This is the Rico.
Yes.
Yes. No, this is the one I gave you right here. This one, wait until you try this one. This is going to give you a different.
Did you give him that one or the agricole?
I give him what we're having.
Okay.
It's a geek moment.
So we're trying to decide if this is. Madeira's probably one of the last places. Madeira and Capo Verde probably the last places in the world that are producing. Somebody's producing sugarcane honey rum. So I'm gonna say this is a very refined agricole,
Yeah.
in my opinion, but I could be proven wrong because there are some flavors in there
It's nice.
which are very rich.
These are
on the buttery side, on the back end, where I think agricoles tend to be like very vegetal, but that's just me.
no.
Thank you for
There's
that.
there's
We're gonna do
as
some
you
research on that, and
Yeah.
we're gonna get back to everybody. So I'm gonna cut off. I'm gonna jump in to New England rum production, right? And hundreds of distilleries. Re- Research I did was the entirety of America had 159 distilleries doing rum, inclusive of New England. So that's
at what year? At what point?
at 1770. There are 159 distilleries, but we can always try to look and back that up.
Okay.
But so we know it's between 118 and
150.
159,
Yeah, yeah.
and that's a lot. But what do we do with the rum? We consume it, and then we sell it. We sell it to Europe. We sell it to Europe for cash and currency, and then we take that cash and currency and we convert that into slaves, and there you have your square. Cash and currency to buy slaves in West Africa. West Africa into the New World traded for commodities,
Commodities.
right? Commodities
Commodities
to be
get
processed
processed.
go to New England and the Americas. From the Americas, they go to Europe to be traded for cash and currency,
Currency.
and there you go. And now you've completed it, because we always think that it goes right from America to Africa, and it's not necessarily always true. There was an extra step in there where we do need to do business with the
And it'd
colonial
be foolish.
masters.
It would be foolish to say that Europe did not have a heavy hand in all of it because they did, and the square does actually make a lot more sense. 100%.
So let's talk about the role of rum in the American Revolution, because this is like one of my favorite geeky moments, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
this is where we get what George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, and all of
no,
that,
man,
and
no.
like they come down a little bit
That's
later.
all marketing bullshit, So,
Yeah, okay.
as it gets lively here at Cafe La Trova, but in 1664,
Wait a minute, before we get there, does the audience know like how much you have actually really delved into this and you this at one time another lifetime ago this was a full-time career for you
yeah,
you were a professor, a teacher, correct?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, education has been, my thing, and I love educating others about helping their discovery, man. Because when you pick up a bottle
Yep.
and you have a great drink, it's phenomenal. It's great. When you have it with friends, it's even better. Um, but the discovery of what you're trying, whether it's your cigar, whether it's your spirit, all that. The more you know, man, the more you enjoy, and that's always been part of me. It's like, let me know, and you become like your own mini geek,
I always
you
like
know.
saying that we don't drink something just because there's there's a history, there's a reason, um, there's time before this moment that we're enjoying this rum, right? That
And
we're trying to
mind you,
figure out. We're trying to
right?
figure out
I'm
exact
first time I'm trying a Capo Verde rum, and I'm gonna say,
because there's no
I'm
notes. I guess we got some phone calls to make
yeah.
tomorrow.
I'm gonna say I'm gonna be the guy who goes sugarcane honey, and you can go agricole, and we'll find out.
Well,
In 1664, right, the first distillery opens up in the Americas, in Staten Island. So now we're working on less than 100-year chunks, because by 1775, right, we have a 100 plus, 120 plus, 150.
so it's 50 years
So
left.
50 years,
Yeah.
we go from one to 100 something. And so think about the need for molasses to keep on feeding the animal, keep the machine rolling. So
And then the population of this of
population
the
is
birthing
growing.
of this nation is growing.
The colonies are coming. We in 1619 we're bringing in the first slaves into America, and then it doesn't stop, because though we may not produce sugarcane, we definitely are producing cotton, and we definitely are producing tobacco. So again, we're commodity based, and we're using that. Again, we're jumping on the square. Everyone picks up something. So we get to the Molasses Act of 1733.
Which is a tax.
It's a tax.
It's a tax.
It's a tax. And basically, they realize, hey, in 1733, that there is a lot of molasses coming into the British Empire, right? They definitely want to control it. They want to control rum production. They want to benefit from it. So they're going to tax it. 30 years later, 31 years later, in 1764, they redo the Molasses Act and call it the Sugar Act. It actually lowered the tax from the Molasses Act,
Act from okay.
but they applied it more generally.
Okay.
So what
That is actually something I did not
so
know. So
so
I'm
what
learning about it
so
now.
so
That's amazing.
what we do as good Americans is, like, we're gonna get pissed off at shit we don't completely 100% understand. It may have been to our benefit, but hey, it kicks off the notion of revolution, which is taxation without representation. And I'm going to read a quote here that I took the time out. It said from our boy Sammy Adams. Who not only was a great political mind, but he may have brewed a beer or two. So he says, if taxes are laid upon us in any shape without our having legal representation where they are laid, are we not reduced from the character of free subjects to the miserable state of tributary slaves?
And that is Washington D.C.'s whole point of having states' rights. Because if you live in the District of Columbia, Sam Adams talked about this how long ago? Almost 300 years ago.
We're
Push
talking
him.
about 1770s, so we're talking over 250 years ago of someone basically understanding that a subject of the crown cannot be a subject if he cannot dictate what the laws that affect them.
I feel sometimes, however complicated these individuals were, right?
Mhm.
They were uh, remarkably brilliant in their
Absolutely.
complexity. I mean, to think about that, because outside of you and maybe a couple of other people, I don't know too many people who are that remarkably intelligent. And here's the other thing too: how much booze they consumed. They were all boozers.
My favorite is my man, WC, Winston Churchill.
Churchill, yeah.
Uh, when you get a Vitola named after you, you've made it. When you drink champagne all day
Yeah.
and you lead the biggest stalwart
More than
against
just,
the biggest evil the world has seen,
yep.
and that is your regiment of champagne in the morning, cigars and cognac,
Good night.
and this is what you do all day, and then you're a little bit of an ass, because the story goes that he's at a very high level function as a prime minister would be, and he was being quite oafish as he was,
Sure.
and one of the ladies says to him, "Mr. Churchill, you are drunk, sir." And he says to her, "Well, madam, you are ugly, but in the morning I shall be sober." So yeah, the
Terrible.
guy was a douche. But
Terrible.
listen, guys that high functioning consumption of alcohol. What can you say? So I really am just happy that we're able to have like this high level conversation.
Sure.
Man, we're going on about an hour.
Okay.
And for whoever's tuning in, listen, we're gonna try to wrap this up in kind of like helping you guys understand a little bit more, and hoping that this helped to understand the history of rum for you. But right now, I'm going to pivot. And listen, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to end the show here. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about styles of rum on the next show.
Which, believe it or not, I will say this: there are 181 countries in the world today who produce rum, and please do not think that they're all the same.
Well, listen, man, we're going to say cheers to everybody out there for tuning in.
Oh, wait a minute. Which one do you want to go back to? You want to try the Fortaleza
no,
again?
man, I want that the Capo Verde.
Oh, no. Wait a minute. Don't you have something special?
Yeah, but we'll save that for piece 2.
Oh, yeah. Here we go. Here, we'll pour a little bit more. Don't mind if I do.
Thank you so much.
No worries.
And
It's
for
my
everybody
pleasure.
tuning in, listen, part 2 coming up next week. And we're going to talk about the different styles of rum. We're going to have a major conversation about that. And with that,
We might even have a special guest.
we might. We never know what happens.
I'm a special
here.
guest, so we might have one.
We might have another one. So we're enjoying here. Salute to you. Happy National Rum Day from Leaf and Dram. This is Frankie Dranks, my boy, Joe Pereira, Capo Verde in the house, yo. All right. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you next time.